Hi, I'm PJ.
And I'm Thomas.
And this is our renovation story.
And I remember putting that tarp up. We were like up on the roof, like pouring rain, like so cold, like slipping, almost breaking our neck, like putting the tarp over, and I was like, this has to be rock bottom. We have been together for 13 years. We have been married for 8. Oh my gosh, 8. This year will be 8, right?
I always let you answer this because I never know
It's
these
8.
questions.
It's 8. It's 8. We met back in 2009 at a mutual friend's get-together, and then we reconnected a year later on Facebook. We just hit it off. We both grew up in the same small town, and so we bonded over that. We bonded over our love of homes and family. The rest is history. We have 3 children. Alan is 7, Zechariah is 6, and then our daughter Ariana is 5. We wanted to buy our home. I think the biggest reason is because it's the house that I grew up in. My mom and dad bought our house, I think in 1985. They renovated it themselves.
When his mom and dad bought the house, there's a photo of his mom, Lila, standing out front with a yard sign. And so when we bought the house back, we kind of recreated that. Like, he has his handprints in the pavement outside in the front. And so it's like him and his brother and his sister, and there's just so much history of his family like being here. And they had the house and then went through tough times and lost the house, and we were able to buy it back.
Whenever we bought it, it was a complete wreck.
The doors were all off the hinges. Like, there was not a single window in the house that wasn't like busted out. It was a party house and it was destroyed.
I will admit it was kind of sad to see like my childhood home in that state.
I feel like we had like bright eyes of like, we're gonna get in here and we're gonna renovate it. We knew it was bad, but I don't think we knew that it was gonna get to the point where we ended up gutting everything. So we took it down to the studs. We redid all of the plumbing, the electrical, the insulation, the drywall, the molding, like everything. We have like the shell of the exterior of the house that's original, and then everything else is basically new. But we knew that we wanted to try to keep the character and the history of it. Ultimately, I'm happy with how it turned out.
We knew that we wanted to keep like the original charm and integrity. It's like our living room and our office, so not much has changed there.
This is the very first room that you walk into at our house. It's also my favorite room. This is the room that I like to drink coffee in the morning. When we were renovating the house, we knew that we wanted to try to keep the original windows, so we kept all of the original windows. Some of the glass was broken, so we had to pull glass from like windows that we didn't use on the back of the house. It had the bookends, and we knew that we wanted to keep them, but they were like painted in lead paint and were in really bad shape, so we had to replace them.
This room is cozy.
Yeah.
I feel like it sets the tone for our house. Like, it's like the old windows mixed with the old floors and just like the books, and it just kind of creates an atmosphere like as soon as you walk in the door. And then of course the hutch.
This is our favorite piece that we have found. We found it at an estate sale. I think we both agree, right? You're like, this is definitely your favorite
definitely.
piece.
I love it.
And one thing that we display on this is things that we have found while we traveled. So we've found like different rocks and shells that we have brought home, and we use it to display. Our kids have joined in on doing that. So our oldest son, this is the first thing that he's added to our collection.
So whenever we first moved in, we used this as our living room, added the desk, which used to be our dining room table. But now it's our big 9-foot table. This is where we do like the kids' homework. This is where we do our emails and do our other work. It is nice because it is big enough so it can fit, you know, a couple people.
We are always on the lookout for different art pieces, and so we found these on yard sales and Facebook Marketplace and thrift stores and antique stores, and it's really neat once you get them all together. And Thomas, you did this wall.
What I'll do is just like lay them out on the floor directly above the wall in the pattern that I want them to be. I don't like them to be perfect. I don't like them to be symmetrical.
So we've made it to our laundry room. When we originally finished the house, we actually never finished this room. It was just a white room with a washer and dryer on this wall and then junk everywhere. We decided that we were gonna renovate it. So when picking the paint color, we had traveled to Amsterdam a few times, and over there's this like dark moody green that you see on doors and like shutters, and we fell in love with it. And so we tried to like get as close to that color as we could to paint the laundry room. And so we went with this dark moody green that kind of, you sometimes say it looks kind of blue, but
The name of the paint has green in it. What is it? Black forest green?
that one is nocturnal green.
Oh, nocturnal green.
And so we built the open shelving above the washer and the dryer. I added the cabinets on each side with the butcher block top. And then we just filled the upper portion of the wall with all kinds of different prints. You had the idea of using like art books to frame.
Yeah, well, that's something that I've been doing for like 10 plus years. A lot of these, like especially above the washer and dryer, are from like a study on Dutch oil paintings or something like that. It's a great way to get good art for relatively cheap. Growing up here, there's always so much that I wanted to do, and my extent, because I was only like 13, would just be like repainting every room. Like I probably painted every room 3 times. Growing up, like my family would come home and be like, oh my gosh, or like I'd rearrange like rooms and they'd be like, Thomas did it again. So now we're standing in the dining room. There used to be French doors here that separated the living room and the dining room. Those were not original to the house though. My mom and dad put those in the 80s. PJ was like, no, those have to go, and pick those out.
They took up a lot of space because when they were open, they were in this room, so we wanted to get rid of it. And then I think this casement opening was a little bit smaller originally because it had the door frame. So we widened the opening coming into this room, but then we matched it all the way down through. So this opening was not here originally, and so there was a small door here, and that was closed off so you couldn't see through the house. And one of the first things that I told Thomas was, I want to be able to see through the house whenever you walk into it. We actually spend a lot of time, we always do like family dinner with the kids in here, and
we do. We are one of those family that actually like uses their dining room. I know like dining rooms are becoming one of those rooms that are almost like obsolete. People usually have like eat at the kitchen island or like have a breakfast nook. We eat every night and every morning here. In these old craftsman homes, they were just like these skinny, very like steep stairs that would normally have just gone to an attic. Like back then, like they didn't really use the upstairs as like living space. It was mostly just for like storage and stuff. They still kind of felt like that whenever we bought the house back.
We redid the staircase. We added a new newel post and opened up the bottom portion of the staircase and then closed off the rest. And I really love how that turned out.
There was lots that we disagreed on when designing our home.
Luckily, we had already went through one renovation and we learned a lot from that first one that we did together by the time that we got to this one. I remember what our biggest, we'll say, discussion was?
Of course, it was the light switches. We got in this like humongous fight. Discussion about the placement of the light switches in the dining room.
Yeah.
Who won?
You won. Yeah.
I never win, but this one I did win. Do you remember I wanted to paint the whole house white, and PJ just kept being like that's not the house for this. Like it's a craftsman home. Like we want like warm, earthy colors, and I'm so glad that you fought me on that.
Basically, if you want to test your relationship, do a renovation together. That'll do it.
Yes. We are now in the kitchen. This is the original kitchen in regards to where it was in the house. However, it looks nothing like it did whenever we bought the house. So before it was like this L-shaped kitchen that my parents did in the 80s. So there was like dark stained cabinets. They didn't go all the way to the ceiling. There was wallpaper, laminate countertops, and then like a built-in desk that every kitchen like in the 80s and 90s had, you know, like it just fills up with stuff and piles of paper. And so PJ came up with the layout of the new kitchen, which is basically like an oversized galley kitchen.
For the countertops, we used a granite counter. We really wanted to use a soapstone, but the maintenance with soapstone is so hard. So we did granite, but we had it honed. So it really gives the appearance of a soapstone countertop.
I think when you hear granite, sometimes you think like your 2000s granite where it's like shiny and speckled, and that's fine, but like it's not the look that we wanted for this house. And so granite is so durable though. Like I'll take a hot pan out of the oven and just set it right on the counter. Like there's no staining, like we spill our wine all the time. And I mean, not all the time. I don't know why I said that. Like spilling our wine all over the place. When we happen to spill our wine, sometimes it doesn't stain. And you can, like I said, they're so indestructible. Like they can take anything, and we love them. So
we did the farmhouse sink, and we did the aged brass for the hardware. We did inset cabinets, which I really love. I feel like it gives it more age when you do the cabinets inset. On the stove wall, we did the hood, and then underneath the cabinets on the stove wall, we did little drawers. Like on this side, we have all of our spices, and they're right here beside the stove, and then we keep our measuring cups on that side. And it really is practical. It's nice to have it right there while you're cooking. The kitchen island is a thrift store find that I DIY'd and redid. So it's got a metal base and then a nice thick butcher block top.
Kitchen is something that it was a nod to the time that this was built. It's not necessarily like a kitchen that you would have seen in this house back in 1924, but like the finishes that we chose kind of borrow from different elements of the like 1920s and 30s to create kind of like a whole space that feels old, but is definitely like a very new kitchen.
It's funny when we have people over at our house, instead of like sitting at the living room where there's tons of space or somewhere else, we always find ourselves with whoever we're with around the island. And it's not that big of a kitchen, but I think it's just a welcoming space, and it's fun to entertain in here. This is our living room. Originally, this was a small like back porch that had like a laundry room and a half bath in it. And it was like eaten up with termites. So we knew that we were gonna have to tear it off. So when we tore it off, we decided that we were just gonna build an addition. So we ended up building a 16 by 24 foot addition. At the time, I think we were thinking it was gonna end up being used as like a sunroom, but over time, it was a dining room, and now it's been a living room for a while now. We ended up doing a bonus room above this living room, and we later ended up having to add the beam that goes across this room. And at the time when we were doing this renovation, we really just wanted the room to be like open and have tall ceilings. And so we were really upset about having to put that beam in. But then we found a way to kind of incorporate it into the room, and then we added the faux beam going this way. And ultimately, we were really happy with how it turned out. We knew that we were going to renovate the second floor, and that we wanted to add, it had two very small bedrooms and a really weird like bowling alley bathroom. And we knew that we wanted to renovate it, but by the time we got to it, the roof had been neglected so bad that we ended up having to rip off the entire second floor of the house. So like when we were standing on the first floor, you could look up and you saw clouds, like you saw the sky. We weren't planning on doing that. We were like, we can make it work, and you know, we'll make what's there work. And then because we had to rip it off, that means replacing everything. So on top of like doing a whole addition on top of the house, you have the additional cost. So I mean, that jumped the price of how much it was going to cost to renovate it up as well. So that was a big one.
The day after, we ripped off the whole like upper story, and so like you could see the sky, like PJ mentioned, like it started pouring.
We at the time were trying to save the original hardwood floors throughout the house, and there was no roof, and it rained for like a month. Our basement filled up with like 4 feet of water, and the hardwood floors were covered. Like we were out here the day after the roof got taken off, and we had bought like a $300 tarp to cover the house. So the tarp was on the roof, but the staircase, like the opening for the staircase was open still. And so as it rained, the tarp started filling up like a pool in the staircase until it ripped and just flooded the whole house. That's what happened.
It's like a water park in our house.
Awful.
It was so awful.
A positive surprise was that we were able to save the hardwood floors. After we adopted the kids, our daughter had just a plain white room, and we really wanted to do something for her that was special. And so we asked her what color she wanted her room to be. And we gave her a complete room makeover. And so we painted her room like this nice, warm, moody pink. Two of the pieces that are in Anna's room, one being the day bed, was a DIY project. We found it online and brought it home and redid it. And then another one was a hutch that honestly had been like left out in the weather, and when we first found it, it did not look like it was going to be able to be saved. But after a little bit of paint and a little bit of work to it, it actually turned out really cute. So we keep all of her like books and knickknacks in there.
Outside of her room, you can walk towards the end of the hall, and that is our guest room. So this is the bedroom at the front of the house. It gets the most beautiful blinding light first thing in the morning. It's such a fun bedroom. I love the slope of the ceilings, and it just feels like you're tucked away like a little attic. This was what was, well, not originally, but whenever I was living here, this was like a long, skinny, narrow bathroom. This is like a pattern. My mom went out of town and my dad renovated. She was gone, so he's found an opportunity, sound familiar? And he like ripped off the dormer, like the original 1924 dormer that was on the house, and he put in this like awful doghouse shaped dormer. Like, my mom still talks about it to this day. She's like, it's so cringy. Like, the whole neighborhood was talking about how bad it looked, and it looked like that until we bought it back and then renovated it. We obviously ripped the whole upstairs off of our house and redid everything up here, so we use that opportunity to make a big bedroom.
It's like a dark green color, and it really, because before it was just solid white. It wasn't fine, but it was a very boring room before, and Thomas picked a paint color. I left and came home and it was painted. I added a little bit of trim to the ceiling just to kind of change it up a bit. I think we had most of the furniture. A lot of the furniture pieces we found at like estate sales. I really like how it came together. It's definitely we wanted the room to be like, if somebody were to come over to our house and spend the night, that they go in there and they can just like fall asleep. And it's so like dark and moody.
I feel like it's a room that could handle being so dark. This is the upstairs bath. We call it the kids' bathroom, but it's also just the bathroom. Like, if guests come over, this is the one that they use. So it's nice that it's such a large space. It's actually one of the largest rooms in our home. Whenever we were renovating this house, we fell in love with the idea of turning like an old bedroom into like a bathroom.
So we wanted the floor to kind of look like a slate tile, but we went with the ceramic just for durability and maintenance. So it was the closest tile that we could find that kind of looked and resembled slate.
This room is also painted White Dove, our favorite white paint. It's not stark, it's not yellow, it's like just this perfect middle ground, and it just like highlights every room. Anytime someone asks us like, what color white should I do? Our first thing is like always White Dove. We tried to choose like more time period appropriate lights. So we have like the schoolhouse lights, the pendants in here, and then the sconces above the sink.
So I'm always inspired by that before and after. I love like taking something that has just been let go and really putting like time and love into that, whether it's like a piece of furniture or a living room or an entire house.
I've only not lived in this house 8 years my whole life, and so I'm happy to be raising our kids in the same house that I was raised in. When people walk through our front door, I hope that they feel comfortable and cozy and just warm, and like that this is a safe space, and they just feel welcomed and accepted here.
Hi, I'm Amber, and this is my renovation story. When I moved in, I knew that I wanted to change everything. So before the pandemic, I was in San Francisco. I was working in tech in the city, loved living there, but I was also a side hustling blogger slash content creator. My business, Blessed Little Bungalow, I started in 2016. It was really just a creative outlet. My blog, I talked about my own home and just decorating different rooms and so on. And eventually people started hiring me to help them with their own homes because I wanted to focus on making sure that people knew they could create the home they loved on a budget. And that's what I did in my own home, and I wanted to help other families do the same thing. So it was a side hustle that kind of became a part-time job in addition to my tech career. And then the world stopped, and the pandemic happened. I lived in a 450 square foot apartment, and even though I had everything I needed, it was pretty isolating. And so returning to Atlanta was super exciting. I wanted to find an older home, one that didn't take too much elbow grease to make changes, but I was comfortable, demoing if needed and making some updates. But this house was one of a few new construction homes being built in Adair Park. Very quaint bungalows that looked like those that were already in the neighborhood. So to find a new construction home that had the craftsman style, the charm, still, it was very builder beige, so I knew I was going to make changes, but I could make it my own. It was the perfect size for myself and my dog, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and knowing that it was like 5 minutes from everything was just icing on the cake. And yeah, purchased it from across the country. The movers came in San Francisco, packed everything up. 3 months after, I decided that I'm tired of living 2 lives. I have got this interior design business and brand growing over here. All the exciting things that were truly just started as a hobby and creative outlet. I decided, hey, let's take a leap of faith. And so it was go time. When I moved in, I knew that I wanted to change everything. I wanted to keep the craftsman style charm. I wanted to make sure the home still felt like it was Southern and in the South, but I wanted to take my mid-century modern love, my love for color and pattern and texture, and create something that reflected who I am. We are in my living room. When you walk through the front door, there is no entryway, there's no foyer. So I painted the walls this beautiful mauve-y, purplish wine color. It greets you as soon as you walk in. It feels warm and inviting. So my house is not quite 2-story. It's like 1.5, I guess, so because of my loft space. So because of that, I have about 20-foot ceilings in the living and dining. I wanted to paint the whole space, but I didn't want to make it feel too dark. And then obviously with the loft ceilings, it might have been more expensive. Well, it would have been more expensive and a little bit more labor to paint all the way up. So I went only up about 5 feet and a few inches. And it's just a very cool design feature. A lot of architectural detail added with just paint, but also gives the opportunity to divide the spaces. I could have done the entire main floor, but decided to just do it in the living and dining space to give it its own personality. Rugs are an amazing way to separate spaces when you have an open concept space, and so I did that with this rug. It's very comfortable shag rug for myself and my dog, and you can see like all the feet of the furniture in this space are on it, so it kind of creates its own zone, if you will. And then in the dining room, I did the same with a boho rug underneath the table. I am obsessed with this table. You can bury me with this dining table. I love it so much. The base of it is just so beautiful, and it's its own piece of art. The chairs are very heavy, very comfortable, in this beautiful green velvet, and then brass on the back just for a little detail. The easiest way to update any home, I feel like, is with lighting. So this Sputnik light was not here. There was something much lower that was more traditional, and by swapping that out, it just gave the dining space its own little identity. So as you can see, a lot of changes, feels like a completely new space, but I didn't have to renovate my home to accomplish that. The kitchen was brown and beige. It was almost too brown. Like, I wasn't opposed to wooden cabinets, but these were almost too dark. They were like really blackish brown, and there was already limited light in the space. So I really wanted to make the kitchen feel brighter, more exciting. And my answer to that was a pop of color with the cabinets. One of the biggest changes besides the cabinetry in the kitchen are these new pendant lights. The pendant lights are to me like the earrings to go with the dress in the kitchen. And so the ones that were here before were kind of tiny, oil rub bronze, just not me. And so I took those away and added these fun pendant lights. They came in a smaller size, but I thought go big or go home, get the 15-inch. And it also gives a little vintage feel, like an ode to Atlanta and Waffle House. I just feel like it makes my kitchen island feel like a diner. I didn't have the dollars to do a full kitchen renovation, but I also didn't need to because it was a brand new kitchen, brand new appliances, and I wasn't mad at the footprint that was there. The kitchen is truly my little rainforest in my house. As you can see, I have a beautiful wall mural that has some of my favorite plants, birds of paradise, Monstera, and it's great to look at when I'm cooking. I'm really happy with how the kitchen came out and how colorful it is. My primary bedroom is my own little boutique hotel in my house. I wanted something moody, something that just concentrated on the bed itself. And so the first thing I did was paint the beige walls this beautiful navy blue. This king size bed, I love the shape of the headboard. This beautiful chartreuse is a great contrast between this bed and the navy. And then when you look up, the first thing you see is this crazy, beautiful, bright pattern of that chartreuse, navy, and lavender that you see in the rest of the space. I just love the pattern, the pop of color, the excitement that it brings, and it just has its own personality. It was the perfect opportunity to make a small space feel grand. The Juju hat is made in West Africa in Cameroon, and they are imported here into the US and dyed different colors. So I love this one that I picked out for the bedroom. I also have been to maybe about 30 different countries. So some of the destinations that are really dear to my heart, here's where I was in Luxor, Egypt. This is Positano, Italy, Kenya, Switzerland, Ghana, and Paris, because of course, if you love art, you have to have a picture of the Louvre. So I love traveling, and I wanted to kind of showcase some of my favorite travel memories in my bedroom. The last space in my house I want to show you is the upstairs loft. Come on. This is probably the most fun and exciting space in my entire house. It is the loft that I dedicated to my niece and nephews. After I moved in, upstairs became the storage space. I don't have a garage. I don't have a true large attic or basement space. And when my niece and nephews came to visit, honestly, Auntie's house was not very childproof. So I wanted to create a space for my niece and nephews to call their own. It is full of color, it's whimsical. I love the pattern that I added with the wallpaper. In talking with my wallpaper installer, Raphael was like, oh, this is gonna be a lot if we wallpaper everything, and there was no clear separation on this wall because it was open to the living room below. So we decided to just wallpaper along the bottom, and then in these cutouts where the windows are, we continue the wallpaper up. But I love, similar to downstairs, how it's just kind of halfway, so it doesn't feel too dark, too small, but also it's just a completely different identity than downstairs. And then I just created different zones for my niece and nephews to play. So there's a snack bar, there's arts and crafts, there's board games, there's a desk if they want to be on their Switch or play or do homework. And then this sofa pulls out into a sleeper sofa for all the slumber parties. This is their house. I just pay the mortgage. When you look at my portfolio on blessedlittlebungalow.com or my Instagram, all you see are color, pattern, fun palettes, like just very funky and ornate gold mirrors, a lot of gallery walls, artwork. like a mix of what I say is my style, which is mid-century modern meets boho glam, and a Crayola box like thrown in there. I am so thrilled with the way my home turned out. It's super colorful, it's inviting for any guest that I have, and I just feel like it's a true reflection of me. It's bubbly, it's unexpected. There's a lot of color and culture and art, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of seeing it every day.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Parks.
And this is our renovation story. So when we started the renovation, the scope of work was everything, as there was nothing truly functional about the house other than it was standing up. Welcome to our home. We call this the 1043. We live here and also run a small business of renting out our property for photography, production, and small events.
We noticed this house really because we had lived just about a block and a half down the road. We had driven by it probably 100 times.
Million times.
At least. Saw a for sale sign in the yard one day. We pulled in, gave the number a call, and I think like the next day we were doing a walkthrough, right?
Off to the races. Once I got inside and I saw it, I was like, oh, no. We're buying this house. We're gonna buy this house.
I had very different feelings, but that's okay.
My full-time position is a mouthful. I do occupational support and advocacy for people who experience developmental disabilities and mental health diagnosis. It's a form of social work. That's still my full-time job. So this is what is kind of tucked into the evenings and weekends. 10 years ago, I had a series of catastrophic eye damage that left me temporarily legally blind and then was restored mostly. And as it became clear that my vision was probably going to be an ongoing struggle and eventually a disability, I was looking for a way to create a business that I would be able to run and be able to support myself should that ultimately be the case.
The house was in a complete dilapidation state at that point. The original woodworking was here, which was gorgeous, but there was no plumbing, there was no HVAC, there's no electrical. It was listed as having like 9 bedrooms and 9 bathrooms, and I don't know how you even fit that in here. Adair Park has a historic designation. It is a historically protected neighborhood. Based off the condition of the house, yeah, there were arguments that this house probably should not exist or should be torn down. However, because of the historic properties of the neighborhood, we couldn't just do that. Not that we would ever really want to, because
why would you tear down these casements?
Right, like the brick in this
Crimes.
house is just too good.
When we purchased it, it did not look like this at all.
It was pretty
rough.
horrifying. The good thing about Parks is he just believes in me.
That's true. I believe that she has a fantastic eye for design and for making something out of what I could see was nothing, which I do not personally have.
I saw the woodwork. I saw the things that old houses have that new houses can't. I like things to have a little history on them. I think old things are better made. So when we started the renovation, the scope of work was everything, as there was nothing truly functional about the house other than it was standing up. The house obviously has some really spectacular woodwork that is the only thing I saw when I first saw it. I could look past all of its indiscretions for the encasements, and thankfully most of them were in not perfect but restorable, which is pretty miraculous. When you're renovating a historic home, you're required to save and protect all of the historic content of the home. So drywall is not historic content, but the casements are. Original floors would be. It was very tricky keeping those pieces protected during the renovation.
We came in one day and all of our doors downstairs, which we had planned to remove, but someone had come in the middle of the night and taken all of the doors off of the hinges and just left the hinges on the walls. But they had removed all of the doors downstairs and stolen.
Salvage like that is worth a lot of money. One of the first things that you see when you walk in the house is the staircase. All of the balusters up the stairs are original to the house.
The balusters that go up these stairs are all hand-turned, handmade, that are no longer in production. As far as we know, these are one of a kind.
We think that this house is somewhere between the 1860s and the 1870s, but because there is no building permit on record anywhere, we don't know for certain. Either permits were destroyed in when Sherman burnt Atlanta, or it predates building permits. We just don't know which.
Over here is our living room. This is where most of our guests will congregate when they first arrive. As a B&B, we were fairly successful. We had quite a few guests there at the beginning.
It was really fun. I enjoyed having people, like having guests from 3 different countries at the same time. We had 3 suites at the time, so a bedroom with its own private bath. And we did that for a couple of years. When we first got here, the original wall coverings were some very wild wallpaper choices that represented, I'm guessing, a few different decisions. We put in a more contemporary mantle since the original one was gone, because trying to find one that was appropriate to the age of the home would have been falsification of history.
The floors here were not in the best shape. There was a big hole in the ground. You could see almost straight into the crawl space from here. So that was a lot of fun. We also had a pillar that we initially thought was going to be a load-bearing pillar that ended up just being hollow. It was purely decorative. Don't know when that was installed.
Or why.
But we removed that to open up the space a little bit more as well.
So now we're walking into our dining room, which was one of the rooms in the house that was in the best shape. The floors were in perfect condition. Somehow it survived all of it. And so really all we did in here is fresh paint, new walls and fresh paint. Obviously all of the casements are like the showstopper of what was in the house, but some of the other details are like these pocket doors, which were in the wall when we bought the house, so they were allowed to stay because we could prove that this is where they came from. And you can tell that these, the woodwork here is reflective of the same pattern on the staircase in the hallway. I don't know if you've heard, 2020 was sort of a bummer. But we were at the tail end of 2019. We had been getting some messages on Airbnb about doing production in the house. Sometimes producers, sometimes people who just wanted to do photo shoots, but that was sort of starting to pepper in. And in late 2019,
Yep.
Amazon booked a shoot for a new speaker they were launching for Christmas, and they were interviewing Rick Ross to endorse this speaker. And we booked that full day and made more money than we did in a month of weekends on Airbnb. There was no laundry. They brought lunch. They took out the trash. And I was like, we have to regroup. But you can't do both at the same time because, as you know, production is so involved. So we were trying to figure out how to jump off of the for sure money and onto the we hope so money when COVID rolled in and sort of said, hold my beer. So we spent all of lockdown making big design changes to make everything super photographable and a beautiful backdrop for what we do now.
In 2020, when the lockdown happened, Tracy decided that she was going to completely paint this room in the pattern that you see here. This is not wallpaper. This is hand paint that she spent, what, 140 hours that you took on
It
this?
took 140 hours. I saw a wallpaper that had a pattern similar to this, and I was like, I went to art school. I can do that. And I had a whole bunch of painter's tape delivered, and I taped the pattern. And then once the pattern was finished, I painted it and peeled the tape off. And this was the result.
So this is our kitchen. When we first got here, it was very different. On this wall behind us was presidential seal wallpaper of some kind. The walls were, on the other sides, were all painted bright yellow, and there were drop ceilings all around. The island was not here at that time. We installed the island. We also have taken where the sink is and moved it underneath the window. We installed these prefab cabinets.
One of the ways that we had to make this space work was we had to get a counter depth refrigerator because the distance between the island and this refrigerator front had to be a certain distance. And so we were able to find this counter depth on Facebook Marketplace, which saved us a heap of money and not having to reconfigure the entire plumbing and gas lines that we had initially installed already. I love the height of the ceiling and being able to put a dark cabinet color. You really become aware of how high the ceilings are. I'm tired of the all white kitchens. So we obviously lean dark here. The joke is that our aesthetic is Beetlejuice chic.
The next stop on the tour, let's head to the bar. This definitely did not look like this before the renovation. Prior to the renovation, there was a small closet that was over here that we had taken out to make it more original to the home. The floors that are here are original to the house as well. This is what was underneath like 7 layers of linoleum, which is crazy. Took us about 3 days to remove completely because there were so many layers. I think that they said that they went through 4 or 5 different pads for their scraper.
Our floor guy was named Florin. That's true. And I remember like after day 1, he looked like he wanted me to tell him to quit, you know? And I was like, it's under there, I know it. So the bar is made from pocket doors that we found in the crawl space. At the time, there was no wall in the house that we could positively identify as their original home, so we could not prove that they were necessarily a part of the home. So the historic ordinance says that we were not allowed to put them back as it would be falsification of history. So we instead had our contractor cut them apart and turn them into the bar. So we left all of the hardware. The supports for the stone are actually the door pulls and the hanging hardware that you can see on either end. So this is our library. When we first bought the house, it was like every other room, a bedroom. It had a makeshift closet in this corner, but thankfully all of the window and door casements were relatively unscathed, which is pretty miraculous. We added the bookcases about a year after we moved in to obviously house my book problem.
So primarily we use this room now as just a relaxing end of the day kind of room where we're put on some records, look through some books, and just kind of relax. So the new business of the 1043 being the production route has been going really well. We've learned quite a lot through that. We've got to be a part of some really cool, interesting shoots.
It's fun.
It is. It is a lot of fun. Am I surprised that this is working? No, not really. Because I do put all of my trust and all of my faith into Tracy and into what she is doing, I'm not surprised that it works. Is it something that I would have done myself? No. But I believe that if she thinks that this is going to work, then it's probably going to.
The thing I loved the most about the experience was I've always been someone who feels most at peace when I'm doing something with my hands and when I can physically make something better. And so that's very satisfying at this magnitude, obviously. I mean, it is certainly a very exhausting endeavor. It's not for the faint of heart. Sometimes I will have a moment where I look around and I'm like, we really did it.
I'm Michael.
I'm Jason.
We have quite the renovation story.
Yeah, it took 17 years. You could see dirt and sky when we bought the house. My daughter and I would walk our normal walk. She was in her stroller, and this house was on our walk. Saw the house. It had a for sale sign for it. I called Michael. She was out of town and said, "Can I buy this house?" She had never seen the house, and we did.
He was so excited. He said, "This will take us 6 months and we'll be living in it." We had outgrown our first house, so we were ready to expand. We wanted to stay nearby. Normally, I like to have a say-so in what we purchase, but he just was so excited, so I said yes. We immediately go see the house together when I get home, and we both see the potential. We're both visual people, so we are able to see beyond the mess that's in front of us.
From what we know, this house was originally built to be a corner store and a home at the same time. The family that built the home built it in 1911 and operated the store well into the 50s, and they raised 8 kids in the home at the same time. When we bought the house had been cut up into triplex or quadplex with random bathrooms and kitchens spaced throughout the home. We came in with a grand, aggressive plan that we were going to knock out all this stuff in a year or two. Then, had a baby, changed jobs, a great recession. Things keep happening, and slowly but surely, it took 17 years. The condition when we bought it was not very good. Where we're sitting right here, you could see dirt and sky when we bought the house.
I think it helped me personally to recognize we needed to phase this out because we had no plans of living elsewhere. So step one was to actually get in here and make it feel livable. A lot of painting, nothing that as you see it was how it was when we moved in. So I think phasing it out made me feel control in a very uncontrollable situation. It was too big.
And so one of the first steps was to undo the 3 apartments inside the grocery store. And then we originally lived inside the grocery store. And it was no really defined rooms. Everybody all in one big room. We had Stella a little area to the side that was her bedroom. But really, we had to get rid of all the random bathrooms, random kitchens, and get a clean slate to work with. The space we're standing in now is the storefront, the original storefront of Smith Loft Grocery Company.
I think our mission for this space was to bring this back to the bare bones of what it was. We've turned it into our home library / shared office space. Behind this wall was once the stock room for the store. And we thought it would be really fun to build out identical built-in shelving, adding in this library ladder so we can take the ladder on either side and climb up as needed. And it just provides us a space to put our collectibles and our life, really.
So we found a few weird, quirky things, old newspaper filings. But the coolest thing we found is that underneath a platform, a floor was constructed over part of the grocery store, and there was a giant safe in there. Now, I don't know the history of the safe, but the patent pending inside of it says 1856.
We assume it was the safe for the grocery store operations.
There was nothing of relevance or value or interest in there. It took me 4 locksmiths to find somebody that would touch it. Most of them came over there and said, "No, not touching it, not touching it." But finally found one who fixed it.
So we think that, the entry door is original to the store. Customers would come in, shop, and I guess if any employees needed to grab anything, they would come back here to what was once the stock room for the store. And now we've turned this into our primary bedroom suite.
In this room, we've pretty much redone every surface. Roughly from where we're standing here all the way to the exterior wall was a small efficiency apartment that had access to a side door. So we had to remove that and left the platform kind of as was. We cut it back, added the stairs, and created our closets up here on the platform. In these old historic homes, you do not have closets anywhere. So you have to be creative where you put your closets. When we were designing the primary bedroom suite, we decided this was our best bet. This 2 feet, 20-foot long run of closets. So I took some old doors that were in the house, bought some other doors, found some other doors, and put them all on a sliding rolling system. So now we have access to the full 20 feet of closets. All of these doors are not original to the house, but they are original to the neighborhood.
So it's really cool. I'm really proud of it. He built it out, like the interior is exactly what I would want in a closet, making the most of the space. So, I mean, I love it.
I've been building things since I was 10 years old. My dad actually renovated a house not too far from here in the early 80s. So on the weekends, I would knock down plaster walls or crawl under the crawl space because he didn't want to and I was little. So I've had hammer and nails in my hand since I was early teens. And then I went to engineering school, and with an engineering degree and now YouTube, you can figure out how to do anything, right? If you're willing to try it.
We are headed to our wet bar.
So what is now the walk-through wet bar was the only bathroom in the house that functioned when we bought the house.
When we finally landed on the design for the other bathrooms, we made sure we had all of those in place. And then we began to demo the room. You know, all of this was vanity, toilet.
This room was gutted down to the studs entirely.
We love to entertain, and we wanted a devoted spot for overflow service counter, cocktail area, a place where people can kind of go and help themselves. So it really makes us happy to have executed this. So this actually is an original door to the home. It connected the back mudroom to the original kitchen. So we decided it would be fun to take this door and add hardware hinges that would make this a swing door. We added in the frosted sign and thought it would be fun to give a nod to the original owners of the grocery store, which is Smith Loft Grocery Company. We love it now. It feels old and unique and kind of an homage to the original owners.
So now we are in the kitchen. This, I believe, was originally 2 small bedrooms that were an addition sometime in the 40s or 50s. It didn't really make sense then. So we ended up opening up this whole space and turning it into this kitchen.
This was a pretty big undertaking because we did not have plumbing on this side of the house. After living here for a few years and really landing on a design direction, it felt better to move the kitchen over here so we could see our backyard and just feel more connected to the back. And we opened all of these walls up so that we could have sort of a live inside and outside all at the same time.
So we spent years designing this kitchen, actually, because we lived in the other side of the house while we were renovating this area. So we had plenty of time to think about the kitchen. We both kind of had the same idea, but it took time to tweak some ideas. You know, does the sink go here? Does the stove go here? And eventually we, you know, over the course of a couple of years designing the kitchen, we came up with what's here today. Especially in the design phase of all of these renovations we've done, because we've taken 17 years, it's always been very, very thoughtful. And, you know, we'd get to a rough idea and slowly tweak, and then, you know, 6 months later, change something else. And so it gave us the time to really come to something we're both comfortable with, that I knew I could execute and that she would like. Yeah.
So this is what we like to call our breakfast area slash games and puzzle area, all around just family hangout. And we love this space just because it just allows that extra room to do the things you want to do without having to move a puzzle to put your dinner down or what have you. And when we moved into the house, this fireplace was hidden and we exposed it, and we just enjoyed so much what it came out to be as is. So we just decided to leave the exposed brick and let it be what it is for this side of the house. This side of the fireplace shares the same chimney as the dining room one, which we've built out completely differently. It's a little more formal. This is way more casual. In this old home, as far as a design plan or a design idea, that I think the thing that took precedence was working within the house. Like, we like to call it working with the quirk, because these old homes are so weird and imperfect, and so embracing the imperfections and just kind of giving it a facelift. I don't know that this fireplace was ever meant to be exposed in this way. And so we just found levels and surfaces that we could make horizontal to be able to just have fun with candlelight and what have you. So we manipulated this a little bit. Next, we're gonna show you the dining room. What prompted the most recent and last renovation in this house was the dining room, and we had been invited to be a part of our historic neighborhood's candlelight tour of homes during the holidays. We'd been invited for years. We declined every year because I didn't have a dining room. And it's really where you can show off. We said yes about a year prior to the tour. We had a couple smaller renovations to do, and we wanted to hold this dining room as long as we could because it was our workshop and catch-all and place to hide everything when the guests come over. And so I guess the last couple of months before the tour was the grind. We thought that when we were going to finally give this space attention, that we wouldn't have that much to do, and little did we know we had everything to do, including ripping walls down, resetting the windows, painting, rebuilding the fireplace, redoing the floors, you name it. We got done in time for the tour with minutes to spare, it felt like. We literally finished 2 weeks before we went on tour, which gave us just enough time to get decorated. This is the room I've been waiting for since day one. Because we love to entertain and we love to cook and we love everyone over, this is the room that makes this home for me feel complete.
The dining room was complete in 2022. I believe she bought the dining room table in about 2016.
I actually bought the table in 2012.
It's sat here for 10 years.
I like to look to the future, and if I buy things, the other things will come, right?
This fireplace was in similar condition as the other side that you previously saw, but we decided to finish this fireplace correct for the age of the home. That is an antique heart pine mantle that we bought. That is an antique cast iron surround for the coal burning fireplace. One thing I love most about the process and renovation we did is that we have essentially handcrafted a home, and that we've been here in this home for so long, raised kids, so much experiences. This is our home.
17 years in the making. Wouldn't have changed a thing, except maybe the time frame. But we were so happy to show it and share it, and it's kind of like sharing our hearts, and we're really proud of it.
Hi, I'm Miriam. Let's go, and this is my renovation story in Portland, Maine. My husband Bob and I have lived here since 2016. Let's go inside. For several years now, I have turned myself into an interior designer. Started in Massachusetts. And we were driving up to start working on this stained glass project, and I saw this house. And there was a for sale sign on the house, and I was like, I gotta get Robert up here fast.
She dragged me to see the house, and we parked out front. We didn't call a real estate agent or anything. We just came to look around. So we kind of snuck in and was like, hello, hello. And all of a sudden we hear beep, 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 like that, and we go, oh my God, we set off the alarm, and we ran out of the house. And then the two of us realized it was
we stood in the backyard, and I was like, that sounded like a smoke detector. So we're like, come on, we're going back in. And it just felt good. As soon as we walked into this room, we knew we wanted to buy the house. But it didn't look like this when we first walked in this room. We had to paint.
Paint and a lot of patch.
The room we're sitting in was a very muddy, dark red. It just didn't do anything for me or the room. And I chose this color. It's a Farrow wall color called Brassica. It just made the molding pop. So this house has has a history, and it's old. It was built in 1857. It was one of the first woman-owned houses in Portland. That's pretty exciting for me. It was one of the few homes that in this area, in this neighborhood, that survived the Great Fire of 1866.
Can't say we found any evidence of the fire.
No.
If you look at the pictures when this house was built, it was an empty field with a dirt road coming up to it. And then you look at the pictures after the fire, and it looks like it was returned exactly the same, except the hill is dotted with tents where people are living, everybody that lost their homes. And the only thing you see in the picture is this house.
Somewhere in the 60s, it turned into a boarding house. And we believe, from what we saw, it was a little chopped up. There was a bookcase that was not very sturdy, so that was one of the first things we did, was we removed that.
If someone has added something to the house that doesn't belong here, and it's also aesthetically unappealing, that's the first thing to go, right? That's just out.
If it was original, where it was there when the house was built, then it's staying, and I'm not going to touch it. We were very fortunate to have plaster molding here, but then I took the old chandeliers, which were not original, and decided to go modern.
This wall was a problem because I kept saying, my books are in storage. I have nowhere to put my books. And then you came up with a brilliant idea.
What I decided to do is, since the room really did seem imbalanced and all the light was coming from one side with these two windows, I worked with a furniture maker, Gabe Sutton. I told him I basically want to mirror the windows on the other side of the room, but let's make them bookcases.
So they came in and measured all the moldings on the windows so that they could duplicate the exact molding. So they were all made by hand in his shop, with custom blades to match the original moldings.
We looked at this room when we first saw it, and we said, we want this room to be our entertainment room. And so the first thing we did was get a very large couch. Around that, we found other places for seating. And it's become a really fun party room, whether it's 3 friends or 25. I also wanted to bring in, because of the period of the house and also because it's also trending, is bring in some wallpaper. And I thought the perfect place would be in the dining room. So this room was originally just a beige color. I just decided that it just needed some life. And I chose this wallpaper because, not that I'm necessarily in love with butterflies, but I thought the scale was right for this room. The longer I live with it, the more I like it. Like butterflies, I guess I should say. I decided to take a darker color, extract it from the wallpaper, and use it for the trim. I decided to pull out another color from the wallpaper, lighter, and put it on the ceiling. This was just a white ceiling, and it wasn't really showing off the woodwork. There was a time in my business where I would just take the trim color and just go through the whole house with it. Now I kind of look at it and I really want to take each room, and it doesn't really matter what the next room looks like. Something else will tie it in besides the trim color. Also liked how I carried the wallpaper into the built-in cabinets. Obviously they are original, but I just thought it was a great way to update them. Just keep a flow going in the room. I've never had a round dining table, and then when I saw this table, I didn't realize it was a Lazy Susan, and neither does our guests when they come to dinner. It's a lot of fun when you have 6 or 8 people around this table, kind of like playing a game, you know? You gotta watch, make sure nobody's like grabbing something and you start turning the table and they have like the big fork in their hand, you know? I want people to feel comfortable when they come to the house. And a lot of times you go into a home that's done by a decorator and it looks like it's done by a decorator, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I think there's enough personal things that we put around the house that people feel very comfortable.
We're good as a team because
he's more the technical guy or the practical guy that says, Marianne, you can't you just can't do that. But, and then I come in and work on the design and the materials and, you know, how I really want it to look. I mean, the thing we had to scrap as soon as possible was the upstairs bathroom. It was a bit of a
Nightmare.
nightmare, yeah.
Because nobody wanted to touch the demolition work in the bathroom. I did the demolition work myself.
When we were doing the bathroom, Robert said, you're never gonna fit a tub in here, because the original bathroom just had a shower stall, a sink, and a toilet. And so I was determined to find the right size tub that would fit in the room and have enough room to walk around the tub.
Determined as a light word. There was actually no way to get a cast iron tub up.
The door is it's not standard size.
Yeah,
so.
we found a pretty unique two-piece
tub
that you actually can carry up with two people and fit it together.
You know, there may be some stumbling blocks along the way, but I'm gonna get over them and get it done. So this room was probably the least appealing to me when we first bought the house, but I knew I wanted to make it our primary bedroom because it was at the back of the house and it'd be quieter. Just felt like I had to soften it up a little bit. This awkward step into, got a seat cushion made to fit the space. I love pillows, so there's a bunch of pillows on there. It's a nice place to just sit and relax or take a nap. The other thing I did was artwork, and large artwork, because it was a small room. And instead of doing a lot of small pieces, we went for the bigger pieces. This is a local artist, Kevin Hickey's, who's right here in Portland, and it just gives the room some color and some imagination. Probably because this was a boarding house in the 60s, I must have collected 6 different doorknobs just in the upstairs doors. So I decided I was going to do the same doorknob throughout the house. It's modern, but in a way it's still classic because you have the glass knob. So I just thought it worked with the house. This house became Bob and my house. Our children were grown up, they were out of our house. So instead of turning some of the rooms upstairs into typical guest rooms, we decided we were each going to take a room. And I chose this one because of the light that comes in, and I use it as my studio. I work here. I just wanted to make it a very calm place, so when I'm stressed working, I come in here and you can see the carpet. It looks like I'm walking along the beach somewhere in Maine. This couch here is just a lovely design because it basically pulls out like a futon, and then you have the wooden sides to it, which when it's turned into a bed, that looks like the headboard and that looks like the footboard. So it really turns into a lovely sleeping area bedroom when it has to be. When we first saw this room with nothing in it, the only thing you could notice was somebody decided to put baseboard heating all around the room.
Very inexpensive baseboard heat, and actually ran the copper pipes along the floor because they couldn't figure out how to put the pipes in the wall. So the heating pipes ran all around the perimeter. They even put it across the front of the fireplaces upstairs.
They decided, oh, we'll just take the piping and just go straight across the fireplace. So of course that had to go. And what we decided to do is really low profile radiators that are more European style, and they kind of disappear and they work really well too. We had a hard time finding a plumbing company, heating company that was familiar with these types of radiators. Bob and I somehow figured out how to attach it to the wall ourselves. Another tradesperson that kind of ran out of the house, he put one of the new heaters up, and that was it.
That was
never
it.
came
We
back.
never saw him
and then
again.
we did the rest ourselves.
We went through 3 electricians who basically came in and started working and said, I'm sorry, I give up.
The first one just left.
They just left?
They just left. They never billed us
They never
for
billed us, they just-
the hours. They just like must have ran out of
Right,
here. We
yeah,
weren't home. They must
they
have just
left.
ran out of here like they saw ghosts.
Finding you know, an electrician that is willing and interested to come up with the tools to work in an old house. And just finding those people and taking care of them because you want them to come back. Even to the, you know, the people doing the yard now was, you know, not an easy project.
This is the most recent of our renovations. The first thing we really had to do was design a fence. I didn't want it to be totally vertical boards going across, so I found this product, which is actually PVC, matched the wood. There was a wooden structure that was added onto the brick house, and it was...
This stone wall was actually part of the foundation of that original structure.
So we had to repair it, but the last thing I wanted to do was I didn't want the fence to cover it. So we decided to put the fence above it, and then have basically, there's sections of the fence, and they all kind of work with what's in front of them. Then came the fun part where I worked with a local landscaper. We just love coming out here now. We feel like it's a little paradise in a little city. Apparently,
This is a historic wall, which is, at least according to the Historic Commission, more historically important than the house.
yeah, it's the oldest wall in Portland, Maine.
We've always liked this kind of property, and we feel a little bit like we're curators. You know, it's the same when you collect things, right? You're really holding them to pass them on to somebody else, and that's how we've always felt about the properties as well.
Well, I hate the word eclectic, but I have to say I like the best of both worlds. I like modern, and I like older things, antiques, vintage.
I am absolutely amazed at where we live. I am. I come home and I go like, wow, it's a pretty cool place. I like it here. I mean, when I have people come here and they walk into this room and go, whoa, that's what I do. So then I know we've done something. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up.
And subscribe to HGTV for more renovation stories.